My mother had an affair with my ex, but she refuses to admit it, even when confronted with proof. My dad believes her, and now I'm the one being blamed for tearing the family apart. Hello, Reddit. I never imagined I'd be writing something like this, but I don't know where else to turn. My world has crumbled in the worst way possible, and the people who should have my back have turned against me. My mother had an affair with my ex, but she refuses to admit it, even when confronted with proof. My dad believes her, and now I'm the one being blamed for tearing the family apart. I need to get this all out before I lose my mind. I grew up in what most people would consider a happy, stable home. My parents were together for over 25 years, and while they had their ups and downs, I always thought they loved each other. My mom was the classic caring and supportive type, and my dad was the easygoing, hardworking provider. We weren't perfect, but we were a family. Then there's me, the only child. I never gave my parents much trouble. I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, and always tried to make them proud. And until recently, I would have said I had a decent relationship with both of them. Then everything changed. It all started when I began to notice how strangely my mother acted around my ex-boyfriend. For the sake of anonymity, I'll call him Jake. Jake and I were together for almost 3 years. He was charming, good-looking, and had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the world, until he didn't. We had our issues, mostly stemming from his flirtatious nature and my growing sense of distrust. When we finally broke up 6 months ago, I thought I had put it behind me. I had no idea that it was far from over. At first, the clues were small. My mom, who had never shown much interest in Jake while we were dating, suddenly started bringing him up in conversations. She'd ask how he was doing, mention that he had texted her about something casual, or laugh at a joke he had apparently sent her. I chalked it up to awkward post-breakup sympathies and ignored it. Then, I started noticing him around more often. I'd come home from work and find him in the kitchen chatting with my mom, or sitting in the living room as if nothing had changed. It was like he had replaced me in my own home. My dad, oblivious as ever, never questioned it. He liked Jake and thought he was just being friendly. But I knew better. The tension in the room when I entered was undeniable. My mother would go quiet, and Jake would act like I was an intruder. I started watching more closely, and soon, the pieces came together in the worst way imaginable. One night, while my mom was in the shower, her phone lit up next to me. I swear I wasn't trying to snoop, but when I saw Jake's name on the screen with a message that said, "Can't wait to see you again." Last night was amazing. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. My hands shook as I unlocked her phone. Yes, I knew her password, and what I found shattered me. There were dozens of messages. Flirty, suggestive, and explicit ones. Messages that left no room for doubt about what had been going on. Some were weeks old. Some were from that same day. I saw pictures, pet names, plans to meet up. I couldn't believe it. I kept scrolling, hoping it was some sick joke. But no, my own mother had been sleeping with my ex. I felt like throwing up. I took screenshots and sent them to myself before putting the phone back where I found it. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? Had they been sneaking around while Jake and I were still together? How could my own mother betray me like this? I knew I had to confront her, but I needed to be smart about it. So, I waited until my dad was home the next evening. That way, there would be no lies, no manipulation. It would all be in the open. I printed out the messages, laid them out on the dining table, and called my parents in. When they saw my face, they knew something was wrong. My mom's eyes flicked to the papers instantly, and the color drained from her face. My dad frowned, confused. I took a deep breath and said, "Explain this." My mom barely glanced at them before shaking her head. "I don't know what this is," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Are you kidding me?" I snapped. "You've been sneaking around with Jake. It's all right here." My dad picked up a few pages and scanned them. His expression darkened, and for a moment, I thought he was going to lose it. But then, my mother scoffed and said something that made my blood boil. "This is fake." I almost laughed at the audacity. "Fake? Mom, these are your texts. I got them straight from your phone. Are you seriously going to stand there and lie to my face?" She crossed her arms. I don't know how you did it, but this isn't real. I would never do that to you or your father. I looked at my dad, waiting for him to see through the lie. But he didn't. He sighed, put the papers down, and rubbed his temples. Look, I don't know what's going on here, but your mother wouldn't do something like this. This has to be some kind of misunderstanding. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Dad, you can't be serious. You think I faked this? Why would I make this up? But my mother was already playing the victim. I don't know why you're doing this, she said, shaking her head. But this isn't right. I couldn't believe it. She was lying. She knew it, I knew it, and deep down, I think even my dad knew it. But he refused to acknowledge it. I had expected anger, guilt, regret, anything but this cold denial. And just like that, the blame started shifting onto me. My mom played the innocent, my dad sided with her, and suddenly, I was the bad guy for attacking my mother with fake accusations. That was the moment I realized I had lost them both. This is just the beginning. What happened next made everything worse. I sat there, staring at my parents, unable to comprehend what was happening. My mother had just lied to my face. My father, the man who had always told me to stand up for myself, to seek the truth, had chosen to look the other way. The betrayal was suffocating. But I wasn't going to let it slide. You really expect me to just accept this? I said, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. Mom, I saw the messages. I saw everything. You can lie to Dad, but you can't lie to me. She sighed dramatically, as if I were some child throwing a tantrum. I don't know what you think you saw, but I have never been inappropriate with Jake. You're making a mistake. A mistake? My whole body was trembling now. A mistake is leaving the stove on. A mistake is sending a text to the wrong person. What you did was a choice. Repeatedly. And you got caught. My father stepped between us, his voice firm but calm. Enough. I won't have this kind of hostility in my house. I laughed bitterly. Your house? The one where my mother sneaks around with my ex-boyfriend? The one where I'm being treated like the villain for telling the truth? You don't know what you're saying, he shot back, his jaw tight. You're upset, and I get it. But you're not going to tear this family apart over some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. The word felt like a slap. You want more proof? I grabbed my phone and pulled up the screenshots I had sent myself. I shoved the screen in front of my dad's face. Read it. Every word. And then tell me this is a misunderstanding. He hesitated. I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes before my mother reached over and yanked the phone out of my hand. This is enough, she snapped, deleting the messages before tossing my phone onto the table. This is ridiculous, and I'm done entertaining it. I couldn't breathe. She had actually just erased the evidence right in front of me. You. My voice broke. You really think you can just delete it and it never happened? She folded her arms. There's nothing to delete. For the first time in my life, I saw her for what she really was. Manipulative. Selfish. A liar. I turned to my father, my last hope. Dad, please, I whispered. Please tell me you see what she's doing. He swallowed hard. His eyes darted between us, torn between his wife and the daughter he raised. And then he exhaled and said, I believe your mother. That was it. That was the moment everything shattered. I felt my chest tighten as tears threatened to spill over, but I refused to break in front of them. If they were willing to betray me like this, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. You believe her. My voice was hollow. Over me. She's my wife, he said, as if that justified everything. And I'm your daughter. Silence. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Wow. Just wow. I backed away from the table, feeling the walls of the house close in around me. This wasn't my home anymore. If you can't accept this family, maybe you should leave for a while, my mother said, her voice chillingly neutral. I stared at her, searching for any flicker of remorse, but there was none. She wanted me gone. The easiest way to erase a problem was to remove it completely. I nodded slowly. You know what? You're right. I turned and walked away, ignoring my father calling after me. I went straight to my room, grabbed a bag, stuffed it with whatever I could, and walked out the front door. No one stopped me. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind spiraling. I had lost everything in a matter of minutes. My family had chosen a lie over me. My mother had ruined everything, and now I was the one being cast out. But I wasn't done. Not yet. This wasn't over. Because what happened next? That's when things got even worse. I drove for what felt like hours, my mind racing between anger and devastation. My own parents had turned on me. My mother, a liar. My father, a coward. And me? I was suddenly the villain in my own family's story. But I wasn't going to let them erase what happened. After spending the night at a friend's place, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and texts from my dad. My mother? Nothing. I didn't expect her to care. But my dad? He was trying to fix things only in the worst way possible. Come home, one text read. We need to talk, said another. And the one that made my stomach churn. Apologize to your mother, and we can move past this. Apologize? Apologize? I almost threw my phone across the room. They wanted me to fix what she broke? I replied with just 4 words. I know what I saw. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. It was unsettling. I expected more fighting, more desperate attempts to cover up the truth. But instead, I was met with silence. That's when I realized their strategy. If they ignored it long enough, maybe I'd give up. Maybe I'd come crawling back, pretend nothing happened, and let my mother's affair become just another family secret. But that wasn't me. I wasn't going to be silent. I made the decision to go back, not to mend things, but to confront them one last time. When I walked through the door, my mother was seated at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like nothing had happened. My father stood nearby, tense but silent. You got what you wanted, I said, my voice calm but cold. I left. I stayed away. But I need to hear it from you. I turned to my father. Do you really believe I made it all up? He shifted uncomfortably. I don't know, honey. It's just what? I snapped. Just easier to believe her than to accept that the woman you married betrayed you? He opened his mouth, but my mother cut in, her voice dripping with forced patience. There's no proof, and you're tearing this family apart over nothing. That was it. I had given them a chance. One final chance to admit the truth, to show even a shred of remorse. But they refused. So I let out a deep breath and dropped the final blow. I sent everything to Dad. Her face paled. My father stiffened. What? She whispered. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Before you deleted the messages, I sent them to myself. And last night, I forwarded them to Dad. Silence. My mother turned to my father, her expression one of pure panic. You don't believe her, do you? But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. And for the first time, I saw real doubt in his eyes. Check your messages, I said, my voice unwavering. And then tell me who's really tearing this family apart. With trembling hands, he pulled out his phone. I watched as his face changed, eyes widening, jaw tightening, hands gripping the device like it might shatter in his grasp. And then, my mother did something I never expected. She laughed. A short, bitter, humorless laugh. So what now? She said, leaning back. You want me to beg for forgiveness? Cry? Say I regret it? She shook her head. I don't. And I won't. That was the final nail in the coffin. My father stood frozen, his world crumbling in front of him. I could see the realization sinking in. He had defended a woman who didn't even care that she had destroyed our family. I grabbed my bag and slung it over my shoulder. I'm done. My father finally looked up, guilt and regret all over his face. Where are you going? Away from both of you. I turned to my mother, meeting her gaze one last time. You win. You got rid of me. Enjoy your life. And then I walked out. For good. There was no dramatic chase after me, no last-minute pleas for me to stay. Just silence. And for the first time in days, I felt free. I don't know if my father ever truly confronted her. I don't know if they're still together, or if he finally realized he was living with a stranger. But I do know one thing. I did the right thing. Even if it cost me my family.